first weekend. And, but that being said, the disappointing part is there's only there really is only one game next weekend that's actually worth watching, right? Alabama's playing Texas. I mean, they're favored by 20. I mean, Alabama's going to destroy them. That's not even going to be a contest. But Kentucky's playing Florida. That's it. Those are the only, and I think those are the only two games where both teams are ranked. The rest of it is a ranked team against an unranked team. So this is one of the issues with college football that, we need to get fixed. As we start with this kickoff and they put all these, the handful of good games to start the season, and then we get 2 or 3 weeks until October. We don't start getting big time matchups until October. Like it's really kind of a pain in the ass. It makes it really difficult, if you're a fan of the sport to really enjoy it. But
yeah. Well, the other thing is, okay, we've talked about this before. I talked about this last year. I mean, first of all, last night's game took way too long, and it didn't even go into overtime. I mean, guys, the first half should be over in like an hour and a half. And it was kind of close to that, but then it's just like after 3 hours, we hit about the 3 hour mark, and there was still almost the whole fourth quarter to go. And I'm just like, guys, what the hell are you guys doing? Like,
these games
take this long.
These games take 4 hours now, and it's
what
really,
the hell's going on here?
It's really painful to be a TV watcher. And there was an article in the New York Times, somebody basically saying, why does watching college football have to be so painful? And he wasn't saying the games aren't good. He was basically saying the commercials and the constant, we've got to make our money off of this. It's just it just sucks as it drains the life out of the TV product. First of all, the college football halftime is 20 minutes. In the NFL, it's only 12. Okay, and they stop the clock after first downs. Now when the referee spots the ball and blows a whistle, the clock starts again. But when you add that up over a 60-minute game, you're now making the game take longer. So it's really. Well,
then the thing is that, like, I'm not necessarily saying I don't like the overtime, but then when you add that up to how long it takes to do a regulation game, and then you go into overtime, you could have 3 or 4 overtimes. You could be adding another 45 minutes. I mean, this is just, this is definitely something that they have to. Well, I mean, they're making so much money, they're probably not going to address it, but it's ridiculous. I mean, these games are taking way too long.
Yeah, they can figure this out. The NFL manages to fit their games into 3 hour and 15-minute windows. So I don't know why it can be done, right? We can see it. We clearly can see it in another, with the NFL versus college. Like, they can do this better. And if you watch an NFL game, it's much more efficiently done. The way they do the commercials it's just much more efficient. So it's kind of interesting. I would like to see if somebody did a study on, how the games are broadcast, college versus the NFL, and why it's so much longer, because it's insanity. Like this, you honestly, it's getting to be like the NBA. Like, don't bother turning the game on until you're 3.5 hours in, just so you can see what happens at the end, because all the rest of it is just, it's kind of nonsense. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But,
real quick, I wanted to point something out while we were talking here. And this is for the people listening or watching. If you don't live in Florida, you have to understand that Florida is a little bit different, especially South Florida. So we're doing this, and I get a text from my wife, a text that she got from her uncle. He, I guess, goes alligator hunting every once in a while. So she texts me a picture.
Don't we all?
Yeah. He's got an alligator. He's like holding the mouth open. I think it's at that point. I think it was dead or whatever. But
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to break down alligator hunting in the next segment.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, if people are ever like, "Man, Florida's different," it definitely is. Because every now and then you get a text like that. Just saying.
Yeah. So but the other, the major college football news is it came out that I think the board of directors or the board of managers for the college football playoff unanimously voted to expand the playoff to 12 teams by 2026. And they strongly urged the commissioners, which is the 10 conference commissioners and the president of Notre Dame, or the Notre Dame athletic director, to try to move this up to 2024. And all I can say is, I mean, come on, college football. Like, You could have done this a year ago. Like, I don't understand what is so difficult about this, right? They were talking about expanding the playoff before last season started. They had 3 meetings about it. That's it. Just 3 meetings and didn't do anything. And now all of a sudden the story comes out that, oh, well, they left $450 million on the table. Well, we got to expand it now. It's it's just, if you've been a college football fan for a long time like we have, this is 30 years of us going, why don't you just do this? It'll be great. It'll make more money. It'll be good for everybody. What's so hard about this? And it's just, it moves like a glacier. It's just come on, folks. And then they're just, well, there's going to be a lot of logistical issues to move it up to 2024. Really? You can't work this out? Come on. This is a multi-billion-dollar organization. You guys can't figure out how to, book hotel rooms and schedule sites and whatever? Really? We're still in 2022, right?
Yeah.
So we literally have over 2 years to work this out. You guys can't do it? It's just...
Maybe they'll figure it out. But, I mean, yeah, it is pretty ridiculous that they're like, I don't know if we can figure this out.
It's just really frustrating. It's but the TV contracts, because ESPN won't give you more money if you give them more games.
Right.
You can't work that out either? Come on. Don't give me this nonsense about contracts get broken all the time, especially when the amount of money that we're talking about here. So, and it's just, it blows my mind. Yes, I should be happy about it. I am happy. Good. I think the 12 team and the format is great. I like the 12 teams. It's the best 6 conference champions get automatic buys. So that means that whoever the highest ranked group of 5 teams, so outside of the Power 5, is going to get in. So we won't have to hear anybody bitching about Cincinnati anymore, because you're going to get in. Whoever the highest ranked conference champion from the whatever, they're going to get in. And, let's face it, there's going to be 4 or 5 SEC teams. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 Big Ten teams. There'll be a couple ACC, somebody from the Pac-12, somebody from the Big 12, and, it's going to be, I also really like the idea that the first round games are on campus. They're not bowl games. So there's the top 4 teams will get buys, and then those other 8 teams will play on campus games. And then the quarterfinal will be on campus games. And then the semifinals and the championship will be bowl games. So I think it's fantastic, but it's just ridiculous that it's going to take us so long to get to it. I don't see why this is so difficult to figure out now. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Overall, I'm happy about it, but it's one of those things that's frustrating. It's come on, college football, get with the program.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to necessarily go off on a tangent, but so. I think with every change that you make, there's pros and cons, right?
Right.
And so, look, we moved to a 4-team playoff. That has consequences, good and bad, and then we're going to end up moving to a 12-team playoff. That has consequences, both good and bad. I think the postseason becomes more interesting, and there's definitely a better possibility that we're going to get better postseason games because, let's be honest, with the college football playoff, outside of some of the championship games, a lot of these semifinal games have been atrocious. They've just been horrible. They've been blowouts. So more games, I think, and you'll get more matchups that you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting to see. So I think that's good. Obviously the money, I guess you're, in a way you could say you're giving more teams an opportunity to win it, although I still think that there's only about 3, maybe 4 teams a year that can legitimately say that we're the best team in the sport and we can win the whole.
But I think you gotta make college football an event. That's what it is. College football is an event. Forget the champion. That's a whole, to me, that's where I feel like we've gone way too far now. We're focused on who wins the title. Who cares about that? Get more good games. Make more events. And the good part is, the way they were talking about scheduling it was, we're basically going to have, once the conference championship games end, we're going to have college football within 2 weeks. So we're not going to have to wait.
That was one of the biggest problems before.
Right. We're not going to have to wait an entire month. So, yeah, you're right. There are pros and cons, right? The 4-team playoff, it kind of, basically it screws up some bowl games, kind of makes them less important, which I know that's important to lots of people, right? It's changed the way that works, and now everybody's focused on can you get in the playoffs. So it's affected recruiting, right? Because they're only going to go, all the kids are going to try to go to those schools to get in the playoffs.
The one thing the one criticism of this that I agree with, and it just I don't know, it is what it is and Kirk Herbstreit was talking about this on College Game Day. The games at the end of the regular season that used to carry such significance because the loser was basically out, like Ohio State playing Michigan, or the Big Ten championship game, or the Big 12 championship game, or whatever the case is. Some of those games are not going to matter as much, depending on how both teams come into, like, if Ohio State and Michigan come into their game undefeated, they're both undefeated, then the loser is still probably going to get in.
Yeah, last year they both were going to get in. I mean, I'm sorry, if you took last year as an example and there was a 12-team playoff, they both would have gotten in regardless of who won that game.
So, now again, there's so much tradition and so much history, and there's so many, like, graduates of these schools. So I'm not saying the game's not going to matter at all anymore. No, it's still going to matter.
We're going to watch.
Yeah, we're going to watch because of the tradition, but the consequences behind the game aren't going to be the same as they were. Again, it depends on the situation. Sometimes it may be the case that you lose, you're out, depending on how you come into some of these different games. Yeah,
the Big Ten and the SEC conference championship games now are basically going to be for seeding. Basically, that game's going to be, if you win, you get a bye.
Yeah, and so there is kind of a thing now where you're some of these games you may be more watching them for, well, if these teams play each other again, then this is what it was like the first time they played, and now we have a better understanding of the matchup. Kind of like in the NFL when, like, you see, two teams play each other, and then you're like, well, if they meet in the postseason, then we'll look back on this one, and there'll be some things that we discuss based on what we saw the last time they played each other. So, again, it's not that college football is not going to keep being popular, and we are going to get more good games, but, that when you make a change like this, there's going to be some things that are going to be different. I don't think there's any way to dispute that. And people could talk about if they think it's good or bad. I can see both sides of it, but, I guess overall I think it's good. They do need to, hopefully this leads to not just we have a good postseason, but also, less fear about losing a game and having it completely eliminate you, and then we can get better out of conference games and not some of the crap that we get now in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the college football regular season.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if schools are gonna change the way they schedule. I hope they do. But yeah, and look at last year as an example, right? Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. Didn't really matter. They were both going to the playoff anyway. So that thing happens even with a 4-team playoff.
That's true.
We still get stuck with that. I do like the idea of being more inclusive. Let's get a Pac-12 team in there. Let's get a Big 12 team.
That's definitely important because they've just been, we can't just have the Pac-12. Like, you've got to be able to pull in different parts of the country, and it can't just be the South. So.
Yeah. So I think overall it's good. I mean, but how do you feel about, some people really hate, the conference realignment and, teams are, teams moving different conferences. Do you think that this kind of slows that down a little bit? Possibly? I don't know. I don't think it slows it down for a school like USC.
Right.
Like the major schools that make the money, they're going to go where the money is. So I don't know that changes anything for them. Right? Maybe that, if you take out the top 25, schools that make the most money, like you go past that, for them, it probably doesn't, they're probably not going to be changing as much, but they wouldn't change anyway. So, I mean, look, I'm of the philosophy, like I understand the tradition. I get that people are upset that, USC isn't going to play Oregon State anymore, but, nobody watched that game though. Like I get that, like I think some of these traditions that they're trying to hold on to, like they're gone. They're not really there anyway. Like I don't get, all the traditions that we still value, we're still going to get. We're still going to get Michigan, Ohio State. We're still going to get, Alabama, Auburn. We're still going to get, Florida, Florida State. We're still going to get those those games. So I'm of the mind. Listen, I want better games, and whatever it takes to accomplish that. I don't want to watch. I'm sorry, I don't want to watch USC play Arizona State and Oregon State and Stanford. I'd much rather they play Wisconsin and Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
You can get upset and be upset about the geography. Like, I understand people don't like it. I get it, but man, listen, if you make the product better, people will come. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. We've talked about this before. I don't want to I understand the argument about some of the different the tradition argument, and but at the same time, like, we'll just there'll be new traditional kind of stuff. Like, before we had the BCS, it was just different kind of stuff, and then it's like, 1 versus 2, and that became a thing for however long the BCS was there, like 15 years or something. And then we get the playoff, and it's like, okay, who's going to be one of the top 4 teams? And then it'll change to we'll have 12 teams, and then we'll kind of adjust to that, and we'll still have some of those rivalry games that'll still be a really big deal.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we didn't have. I mean, Alabama-Georgia was not a rivalry before the 14 playoff. That was not. They played each other every once in a while, but that was not what it is now. What was the other one that I was going to say?
Bama, Clemson.
I was going to say Texas A&M and Alabama. Like, that wasn't a thing. And then Johnny Manziel comes along, and all of a sudden, oh boy, look at that. So yeah. I feel like we're going to get new things.
Well, the other thing is, like, Texas A&M, they, like, once Texas goes back to the SEC, I mean, Texas playing Texas A&M was like 100-year thing. Like, they played every year, and then Texas A&M left the Big 12, so then they stopped doing it. But they might bring that back. So yeah, it's like we'll have old things, but then we'll replace them with something else, and then maybe some other stuff comes back. I don't know. I mean,
and some of these traditions
aren't great because one of the teams sucks.
Right. Well, and some of these traditions aren't really true anyway. Texas used to be in the Southwestern Conference. Like, they weren't in the same conference with Oklahoma. And then Nebraska and Oklahoma were in the Big 8. And then they became in the Big 12. They got rid of the. So, I think it's. I know people are all up in arms about it, but listen, man, we just want the product to be better. That's all. That's our overriding theme on this show.
Right.
All right, so let's wrap that up.